On November 24, 2009, 26-year-old John Edward Jones became stuck and died in the cave after being trapped inside for 28 hours. His remains couldn't be recovered because, ultimately it was decided, it would be too risky for rescuers to attempt to remove the body. And to this day, the Nutty Putty cave is the final resting place of John Jones. The air was heavy with the musty scent of earth and damp stone as John Jones took his first step into the gaping mouth of Nutty Putty Cave. Located deep in the wild Utah desert, this underground maze was notorious among cavers for its narrow, winding passages and its history of trapping even the most experienced explorers. To John, an adventurous spirit with a thirst for the uncharted, it called out with a dark allure. The challenge was irresistible, a siren song beneath the cracked and sun-baked landscape. John had convinced his brother, Josh, and two of their friends to join him. They arrived just as dusk began to stretch its long shadows across the terrain. The stars emerged timidly, speckling the sky with glimmers of hope that contrasted sharply with the foreboding blackness yawning at their feet. They tightened their headlamps and squeezed through the entrance, the world above slipping away with every shuffled movement. The cave was a labyrinth, twisting and turning with claustrophobic fervor. John's laughter echoed faintly as they maneuvered deeper into the cave, the sound vibrating through the narrow corridors like a ghost's whisper. His voice, so full of confidence, masked the unease he felt as the walls closed tighter around them. A thrill surged through him. This was what he lived for. The challenge. The unknown. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Josh asked, his voice strained as he shone his flashlight over a passage barely wider than a body. John grinned, his eyes catching the beam of his headlamp. "This is the way. It's called the birth canal for a reason." With mutual grunts of determination, they pressed forward, bodies contorting through rock formations that felt like iron bands closing around them. Each movement was deliberate, a slow dance of tension and trust. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the hiss of their breath and the occasional scrape of cloth against stone. Then, John saw it, the unmarked fissure just ahead, promising an unexplored route. It was narrower than he remembered from his research, but he was certain it led to an unexplored section of the cave. His heart quickened with the promise of discovery. "John, we don't know where that goes," Josh warned, his voice trembling in the stifling dark. "Only one way to find out," John replied, a playful defiance masking the tremor in his chest. He pushed his arms out ahead and slithered into the fissure. His chest compressed as he inched forward, the rock biting into his ribs. The space felt wrong, too tight, too unforgiving. Panic clawed at the edges of his mind, but he forced himself to focus, to breathe. "John, you okay in there?" Josh's voice came from somewhere behind, muffled and distant. "Yeah," John lied, his voice weak as he tried to maneuver forward. The realization hit him with a sudden, heart-stopping clarity. He couldn't move. The narrow walls of the tunnel pinned him like a vice. He tried to shift his weight backward, but the stone pressed down, unyielding and merciless. "I'm stuck," he finally whispered, his words barely reaching his own ears before they were swallowed by the earth. Panic surged. John thrashed against the stone, his muscles screaming as he twisted and pushed. The air grew hotter, tighter. He felt the cold sting of fear crystallize in his chest. The blackness around him seemed alive, pulsing with the weight of every breath. "Josh, I'm stuck. I can't move." This time his voice broke free, ringing out in a desperate, ragged shout. Scrambling feet and the metallic clank of equipment echoed back as Josh wormed his way closer. The flashlight beam bobbed erratically until it stopped, illuminating John's pale, dirt-streaked face, wide-eyed with panic. "Hold on, John. We'll get you out," Josh promised, trying to mask the dread tightening his own throat. Time seemed to slow as Josh and the others worked frantically, shouting instructions and offering reassurance. The cave responded with cold indifference, its silence suffocating. John's breaths came in shallow, painful gasps. The air felt thinner, more sinister. An oppressive silence fell over them, the weight of the earth above pressing into John's chest like a terrible premonition. As minutes turned to hours, John's body ached with exhaustion, his muscles seizing with the effort of staying calm. Whispers, too faint to be real, seemed to creep from the rock. He squeezed his eyes shut, fighting the terror that threatened to break him. "You'll be all right, John. We called for rescue. Just hold on," Josh said, His voice strained, hollow. But John barely heard him. A new noise filled the void, an almost imperceptible sound like stone grinding against itself. It trickled into his ears, a subtle groan that seemed to emanate from the walls around him. His eyes flew open, darting in the darkness. A shadow shifted, or so it seemed. The rescuers arrived as the night thickened, their voices a mix of hope and urgency. The hours blurred as ropes, pulleys, and desperate plans were drawn. As they worked, more stories of Nutty Putty's dark history surfaced among the rescuers. Tales of other cavers who had felt an unexplainable dread in these depths. Stories of whispered voices and cold hands brushing past when no one was there. The rescue efforts lasted until the first blush of dawn lit the horizon. Despite every strategy, every ounce of will, John remained trapped. Rescuers concluded that it would be too dangerous to attempt to retrieve his body. The landowner and Jones's family came to an agreement that the cave would be permanently closed, with his body sealed inside as his final resting place. And as a memorial to Jones. Explosives were used to collapse the ceiling in the edge-push passageway of the cave close to Jones's body, and the entry points to the cave were permanently sealed by filling them with concrete, to prevent any future access.